got to first economically hurt us. You know, they hate our guts, so they're happy to just steal, destroy the dollar, crush our future, get us enslaved. Once they've got that, then as the IMF engaged in Argentina and other countries, once things fully implode, then the riots, then the troops. Is Adrian Salbuchi, and he's a researcher, author, speaker, international consultant, economist, advisor to international companies, specializing in political, economic, and financial power structures of globalization. He's a founding member of Argentina's Second Republic movement, and he's 56 years old, 4 children, and he has the website asalbuchi.com.ar. So A and Salbuchi spelled S-A-L-B-U-C-H-I. And he's the author of several books on geopolitics, international relations, and other subjects. The bio goes on. And of course, he wrote a series for major newspapers like World Government. So he's an expert on the New World Order. And he's from Argentina, where they engineered the collapse. I'll never forget the Washington Post, right after the collapse of Argentina, reported that within 2 weeks of it happening, middle-class people were homeless and a truck dumped over with cattle, and the people were running up, slicing wet globs of raw meat, gobbling it, starving to death. And Argentina is still in desperate straits, the most wealthy country in Latin America, on par with the U.S. They let the bankers come in. Same thing was done there. Sir, thank you for coming on with us.
My pleasure, Alex. How are you? Great to say hello to you and your audience.
It's great to have you here. Sorry we got the numbers mixed up, but we at least have to the end of the hour. We're about to break. Okay, parallels. Tell folks what happened in Argentina versus what's now being done to the U.S., Iceland, Europe, Australia.
Well, we had a series of collapses with different characteristics. We had one in 1975. That's why I always say I'm 56, and I went through 3 of them. One in 1975, a much worse one in 1989 that ended in hyperinflation, and the very worst was in 2001, 2002, which is the one you're referring to, Alex. And what happened then is the whole banking system collapsed, the chain of payments collapsed, people had their money completely blocked in the bank, they just couldn't get it out to even buy the most elemental necessities of life or pay their petrol and their gas in the car tanks and so forth. And as you say, we did have some extreme cases, as the one you said, you know, people, very poor people, impoverished people doing anything to have something to eat. And the net result is that once the whole thing more or less came back under control, about 50% of our population went below the poverty line, and they never came back. They're still down there below the poverty line because these New World Order people work with a lot of psychology, and they know that people, in the long run, get used to anything. So they've arranged to have us all get used to just, well, at least half the population to living below the poverty line, and it's just more of a question for the police than a question of actually getting things done. I call it, Alex, when you're in grief over somebody's death. We've all lost a dear person in our family or a friend, and at first we feel shock, and after that, terrible grief, and then it's terrible sitting down at the dining table and seeing that the chair where your dad or your mom used to sit is empty. But after a month, after 6 months, after a year, you get used to it. You cope with it. And they did that. Part of the experiment they did with us was that. They took our money away. Everybody was banging pots and pans down the street. Everybody was screaming, yelling. I had friends that literally, and I myself, wanted to set fire to the city.
Stay there, sir. Got a break. Amazing. From Argentina. Stay with us.
At a glance, I looked at you.
Adrian Salbuchi is our guest, economist, researcher. He wrote back in 1995, World Government, the book, and how they were controlling his nation. It's the same thing. The IMF and World Bank brag. You heard Jim Tucker earlier with sources inside Bilderberg. They are celebrating. Well, George Soros is in the news saying this is the greatest time of his life, the culmination, that he's behind this all, and they can't wait till you're bankrupt under their control. This is a tool of their control. They can't wait to turn the police loose on you. That's why CPS kidnaps people's kids that are poor. They want all your kids. This is them taking over. This is a military operation. Okay, Mr. Salbuchi, continuing, you've lived through this, and I love the analogy you do, showing a peso and the devaluation of it. Continue with what the globalists are doing and what's going to happen here.
What you were saying, Alex, about the peso that I show in the YouTube film is just to show a 1 peso coin, 1 Argentine peso coin, will hardly buy you a bus drive in downtown Buenos Aires, and yet through 4 monetary reforms, that same peso in 1970 would have been equal to 10 trillion pesos, which would have bought you Argentina 4 times over, so to speak. So that is, we know what inflation, hyperinflation are all about. And what I was saying just before the break, and this is something that we should all keep in mind, I think that Argentina in 2001 and 2002, when we had our financial, banking, and monetary collapse and meltdown, in a way, we were sort of a trial case. We were sort of an experiment to see how people would react.
Latin America has more resources in South America than the U.S. does many times over. The people are hardworking, too. The elites brag that they hyperinflate things every few decades to keep the people poor, and the elites buy up real assets while they're inflating it. Then they announce it's worthless to destroy confidence and consolidate even more. Now they're going to try this here. They've never really done this here because they're afraid of the guns. They've decided to go ahead and do it here and march the military and police against the public. So that's why this is going to be so much worse than even Argentina. And so this is what's going to happen. The government's going to take everything most of you've got.
Think of the Kirchners, who are the president, Cristina Kirchner, who's the president of Argentina, or think of Obama, or even George W. Bush, any president. Don't think of them as the president. Think of them as your national CEO. So if Obama is your national CEO, that automatically triggers 2 key questions. If Obama is our CEO, who sits on the board of directors of the United States of America? And much more important, who are the shareholders who own the United States of America, or Argentina, or Brazil, or any country you like? When you start understanding that, then you realize that what these guys do is they go into any country, yours or mine, they identify the SOBs, and believe me, there are millions of them, who are willing to sell out their country for money, for prestige, for fame, for power, for personal power. They pay them all they want, they pay all their campaigns, and then they have them as CEOs to do their own dirty work. They don't need invading forces. They don't need an invasion as you've had to do in Iraq or in Afghanistan, or you did in Vietnam, which looks very bad in the 6 o'clock news. They know, and Argentina is a prime example of this, that they can do this through the control of well-paid local managers to do them their dirty work.
What point is the United States at? How do you see them trying to bring us down and consolidate things? They're openly announcing they're going to implode the whole world, set up a new bank of the world that will set the carbon taxes, regulate every facet of our lives, have its own military to rule us. I mean, we're going from the bankers being behind the nations running things to openly putting crowns on their heads and saying, we own you.
Exactly.
So speak to that, this new imperialism, this new colonialism, but openly by the polycentric bankers.
Look, I think the key to this is to understand what they mean when they say New World Order. You know, New World Order doesn't mean that it's what they're going to do tomorrow. New World Order is a generic term. They used it in 1919, just when they founded the Council on Foreign Relations and the Royal Institute of International Affairs in Paris, after the Treaty of Versailles was imposed upon Germany and Austria-Hungary and the Turks. They talked about a New World Order after World War I. When World War II was about to end and they got together in Bretton Woods and so forth, it was to form a New World Order, which was the Yalta schizophrenic world of the post-war Second World War, with the USSR on one side and the USA on the other side. When they were getting ready for globalization and they knew that the USSR had to go, George Bush announced, George Bush Sr., we're going to have a New World Order called globalization. Fine. Now they're talking about another New World Order. And that New World Order they're talking about now is world government. It was announced on 8th December 2008 in the pages of the Financial Times London by one of their key journalist, Gideon Rachman, and the title of the article says it all. They just wrote, now it's for world government. We're going for world government. And the guy says, I'm not talking about governance. I'm not talking about international cooperation. I'm talking about world government. And that is the next stage that they want to drag us into. That's why it's so bloody dangerous what's happening right now.
And then you find out that they are literal eugenicists who gave Hitler his own ideas. You find out they're total control freaks on a power trip, and that they've been working for a world government so they can literally carry out one-child policies, culling, you name it. I mean, if folks are upset about world government, They should really be upset if they know what the end game is.